You are not bad with money. You were just trained early without knowing it. Think about that for a second. Nobody handed you a manual on money when you were 5 years old. Nobody sat you down and explained interest or saving or what a dollar was really worth. And yet somehow, you already had a plan. A plan you never chose. A plan that was written into you before you could even read. Here is what most people never realize. The way you feel about money right now, today, as an adult, was decided a long time ago. It was decided in kitchens, in cars, in quiet moments you probably forgot. A parent counting change at the register, a whispered argument about a bill, a moment of pride when someone finally paid something off. Your brain was watching all of it, and it was taking notes. This lesson is a great way to improve your English while you think about something that could change your future. That early notebook in your mind became something psychologists now call a money blueprint. And here is the hard truth. Most people spend their whole lives following that blueprint without ever opening it up to look inside. They think they are making free choices about spending, saving, or earning, but often they are simply repeating a pattern that was set before they turned 10. Maybe you already feel this. Maybe you earn well, but the money never seems to stay. Maybe you save carefully, but you still feel poor inside no matter the number in your account. Maybe you watch other people take risks with confidence, while something in you always pulls back. If any of that sounds familiar, you are not broken. You are simply running a program that was installed a long time ago by people who were doing their best with what they knew. Your past set the pattern. You can set a new one. That second sentence is the whole reason for this lesson. Because a blueprint is not your identity. It is just a set of instructions someone gave you early, often without meaning to. And instructions can be rewritten. Not in one lucky moment, not with a single decision, but slowly, on purpose, once you finally see the pattern clearly enough to interrupt it. So here is the promise for the next few minutes together. By the end of this lesson, you will see exactly where your money habits came from. You will understand why certain fears or habits around money never seem to leave you, even when your life has changed completely. And more than that, you will walk away with real, usable ways to begin rebuilding that blueprint starting today. Stay until the end. This may change how you see every single dollar that passes through your hands. Lesson 1. The blueprint was written before you could read. Before you knew what money was, you already had a plan for it. That sounds strange, but it is true. Long before you could count coins or understand a bank account, your mind was forming beliefs about what money means, who deserves it, and what happens when you have too little or too much of it. Financial experts have a name for this. They call it a money script. A money script is a belief about money that runs quietly in the background of your mind, shaping your choices without you ever noticing it is there. You did not write this script on purpose. It was handed to you piece by piece through everyday moments in your childhood home. Think back to your kitchen table growing up. Maybe money was never discussed at all, treated almost like a secret. Maybe it was discussed constantly with worry in every conversation. Maybe it was a source of pride, or maybe it was a source of shame. Whatever it was, you absorbed the emotional temperature of that room. Children are excellent at reading emotion, even when they cannot understand the words being spoken. Here is the first truth we need to accept together. Your current relationship with money is not random. and it is not entirely your own invention. It has roots. And those roots go back further than most people ever bother to look. Here is a simple way to test this for yourself. Ask yourself what your parents, or the adults who raised you, believed about money. Did they believe there was never enough? Were wealthy people seen as greedy? Did they trust that hard work always leads to a fair reward? Or did they believe the system was rigged against people like them? Whatever belief they held, spoken or unspoken, there is a strong chance some version of it is still living inside you today. This does not mean you are trapped by your past. It simply means you need to become aware of the plan you inherited, because you cannot rewrite a plan you refuse to look at. Awareness is not the finish line. It is the starting line. Many people go their entire lives assuming their financial struggles or their financial fears are simply personal flaws. They believe they are careless or lazy or somehow bad with numbers. But often, what looks like a personal flaw is actually an old family blueprint quietly repeating itself through a new generation. So before we go any further, sit with this question honestly. What is one belief about money that you learned before you ever earned a single dollar yourself? You do not need an answer right now. You only need to start looking. You did not choose that first plan, but you can choose the next one. Lesson 2. You learned by watching, not by listening. Nobody sat you down and explained money. You watched it happen. This is one of the most overlooked truths about how children absorb financial habits. Parents rarely give formal lessons about money. Instead, children learn by observing, day after day, year after year, until the behavior becomes second nature. Picture a child sitting at the kitchen table while a parent counts bills at the end of the month. Jaw tight, shoulders tense. The child does not understand budgets or debt, but the child understands tension. The child understands fear. And without a single word being spoken about money, a lesson is learned anyway. Money means stress. Money means something to be afraid of. Or picture a different scene. A parent avoiding the mailbox for days, letting envelopes pile up unopened. Again, no lecture is given, but the child learns something powerful. Money problems are something you hide from, something you avoid looking at directly. Years later, that same child, now an adult, may find themselves avoiding their own bank statements without ever understanding why looking at their own numbers feels so uncomfortable. This is how modeling works. Children copy behavior long before they understand it. Howard Schultz, the man who built Starbucks into a global company, has spoken publicly about growing up in government housing in Brooklyn, in a home where his father was often out of work and financial fear was a constant presence. That early exposure to instability did not disappear once he became successful. Instead, he has described it as one of the forces that pushed him to build a company that offered its employees benefits and health care, something almost unheard of at the time. His early environment did not just create fear. It eventually created purpose. This shows us something important. The pattern you absorbed as a child does not have to control you forever, but it will keep quietly running the show until you notice it is there. Here is where the two paths begin to separate. One path is reacting to money with fear, letting old anxiety make every decision for you. Avoiding bank statements, avoiding investment, avoiding growth, simply because instability once felt dangerous. The other path is responding to money with a plan, acknowledging the fear without letting it drive, and choosing a deliberate, calm approach instead. Reacting to money with fear keeps you stuck in a childhood pattern. Responding to money with a plan is what allows you to finally step outside of it. Ask yourself honestly which one describes you more often right now. There is no shame in the answer. Almost everyone starts on the reacting side. The goal of this lesson is simply to help you move one honest choice at a time toward the side that responds instead of reacts. Lesson 3. Fear built either a hoarder or a spender. Not having enough leaves a mark. It just shows up in different ways. Scarcity is a powerful teacher, and it does not teach the same lesson to everyone. Two people can grow up in nearly identical financial hardship and walk away with completely opposite habits as adults. Understanding why is one of the most useful things you can learn on this journey. Consider a woman who grew up watching her mother save obsessively. Every extra dollar was hidden away. Treats were rare. Vacations did not exist. The mother's motto, repeated often, was simple: "You never know what tomorrow will bring." As an adult, this woman built a successful career and earned a comfortable income. And yet she found herself terrified to spend money even on things she could easily afford. A new coat felt like danger. A nice dinner out felt like reckless risk. She had financial security on paper, but she carried the emotional experience of scarcity in her body every single day. Notice what happened here. The lesson she absorbed was not really about money. It was about safety. Saving became her way of feeling protected from an unpredictable world. And so, even once the danger was gone, the behavior remained, because the fear underneath it had never actually been addressed. Now picture someone else raised in a similar situation of financial hardship, but who reacted in the opposite direction. Now grown, this person spends quickly, almost as soon as money arrives. Savings accounts feel pointless to them. Why hold on to money, some part of them reasons, when it could disappear at any moment anyway? Spending becomes a way of feeling in control, a way of enjoying life before circumstances take that chance away. Here is the truth most people never connect. One person hides money. Another spends it fast. Both are running from the same fear. Both responses, saving obsessively or spending impulsively, can be traced back to the exact same root: a childhood sense that resources were never guaranteed. The behaviors look like opposites on the surface: hoarding versus spending, caution versus impulse. But underneath, they share the same emotional engine: fear of scarcity, simply expressed in two different directions. This matters because most advice about money focuses only on behavior. Save more, spend less, budget carefully. But behavior alone rarely changes anything permanent if the underlying fear is never acknowledged. You can force yourself to follow a budget for a few months through willpower alone, but if the old fear is still running underneath, it will eventually find a way to resurface. So if you recognize yourself in either of these stories, the saver who cannot enjoy her own money, or the spender who cannot seem to hold on to any, take a moment to ask yourself a deeper question. Not simply, what do I do with money, but instead, what was I afraid of back when this pattern first began? That question is where real change actually starts. It is worth noticing that neither the saver nor the spender is doing anything foolish. Both are in their own way trying to solve an old problem with the only tools they were ever given as children. The saver is trying to guarantee safety. The spender is trying to guarantee joy before it can be taken away. Once you can see the fear underneath the behavior itself stops feeling like a character flaw and starts feeling like something far more human and far more workable. Lesson 4. Money was never just numbers. Every dollar carries a memory, even if you never noticed. This might be the single most important idea in this entire lesson, so let it sink in for a moment. Money is never purely mathematical. Long before it became a number in a bank account, it was tangled up with feelings. Safety, shame, pride, fear, love, and sometimes even guilt. Think of a man who, as a boy, watched his father lose almost everything after a failed business venture. He remembers the exact day the family car was sold. He remembers his mother's quiet crying behind a closed bedroom door. He remembers, most of all, the look on his father's face, a mixture of shame and helplessness that no child should have to witness. Later in life, this man became successful in his career, yet he could never bring himself to invest in anything, not stocks, not property, not even a modest retirement account with steady, predictable growth. Every opportunity that involved risk triggered the same old feeling. This is how everything gets taken away. Notice that his fear was never really about spreadsheets or interest rates. It was about a memory of watching someone he loved lose everything and feeling powerless to stop it. Until he consciously connected his adult avoidance of risk to that specific childhood memory, no amount of financial education could fully change his behavior. He needed statistics to make the case, but he needed to feel safe to actually act on them. This is the deeper layer most financial advice completely ignores. You cannot fix a feeling you never named. If any of this feels familiar, type the word blueprint in the comments below. It helps to know you are not alone in this, and it helps us understand exactly which stories are landing with you. Here is the choice hidden underneath almost every financial decision you make. Believing money is dangerous, something that can vanish, humiliate, or destroy at any moment, versus believing money is a tool, something neutral, something that simply amplifies whatever intention you bring to it. Neither belief was chosen consciously. Both were absorbed, usually from the handful of powerful emotional moments in childhood. The dangerous version keeps you frozen, avoiding growth out of self-protection. The tool version lets you use money deliberately for security, for freedom, for the people and causes you care about. The good news is this: erasing your past is not required in order to change your relationship with money. You simply need to bring the old memory into the light, look at it honestly, and ask yourself a new question. Is this belief still true for me today, in my current life, with my current choices? Often, the honest answer is no. The danger passed years ago. Only the feelings stayed behind, still running quietly in the background, still shaping decisions that no longer need to be shaped by fear at all. Lesson 5. You cannot out-earn what you believe you deserve. There is a ceiling in your mind long before there is one on your paycheck. This is one of the hardest truths to accept because it means the biggest limit on your income is often not your skill, your effort, or even your opportunities. It is your identity. Specifically, it is what you secretly believe a person like you is allowed to have. Oprah Winfrey has spoken openly about growing up in extreme poverty in rural Mississippi, moving frequently, and facing hardship that shaped her early sense of what was possible for someone like her. Building the level of success she eventually achieved required more than talent and hard work, both of which she clearly had. It required an internal shift, a willingness to believe that she was allowed to take up space, allowed to be seen, allowed to earn and hold real wealth, despite everything her early environments had quietly suggested otherwise. This is what we call an identity ceiling. It sounds like this. In the back of your mind, people like me do not become wealthy. Or it is greedy to want more than this. Or someone will resent me if I succeed too much. These beliefs rarely announce themselves directly. They hide inside smaller decisions. Think of the moment someone turns down a promotion that would have paid significantly more, telling themselves they are simply not ready yet. When in truth, a quieter voice inside is whispering that they do not belong in that room. Think of the freelancer who charges far less than their work is worth, convinced that asking for more would somehow be arrogant. These are not random choices. They are the identity ceiling quietly enforcing itself. Raise the ceiling in your mind, and the number follows. Here is where another important choice appears. Spending to fill a childhood gap, buying things impulsively to compensate for what once felt missing or unfair, versus spending with clear intention, using money deliberately aligned with real goals and real values. The identity ceiling often works alongside this pattern. A person may earn just enough to occasionally feel good, then unconsciously sabotage further growth because deep down, more success feels unfamiliar, even unsafe. Spending to fill a childhood gap keeps you circling the same emotional wound again and again. Spending with clear intention finally lets that wound close. Raising your identity ceiling does not happen through one bold decision. It happens through small, repeated proof. Taking one opportunity you would normally shrink away from, naming your price once, even when it feels uncomfortable. Allowing yourself to enjoy a modest success without immediately downplaying it. Each of these small moments sends a new message to that old, quiet voice. Maybe I am allowed after all. None of this requires arrogance, and it does not require becoming a different person overnight. It simply requires noticing the moments when you shrink for no real reason, and choosing just slightly to take up a little more space than the old ceiling allowed. Over time, those slight adjustments add up to something that looks, from the outside, remarkably like confidence. Lesson 6. We build the life we swore we would never live. Somehow, without planning it, you end up standing where they stood. Almost everyone has said the words, "I will never be like my parents when it comes to money." And yet, quietly, without any dramatic moment marking the shift, many people eventually find themselves living out a version of the exact pattern they once swore to avoid. Consider a boy who grew up hearing one phrase constantly repeated in his home. Money does not grow on trees. It was said whenever he asked for something, whenever a bill arrived, whenever the family faced any financial stress at all. As a child, he absorbed a simple but powerful belief. Resources are always scarce, and wanting things is dangerous. He promised himself that once he was an adult earning his own income, he would never live with that same anxious scarcity again. And yet, years later, despite earning a solid income, he found himself working relentlessly, taking on extra shifts he did not need, feeling guilty during any moment of rest, and struggling to ever feel that he had truly done enough. He had not repeated his parents' poverty, but he had repeated something else entirely. Their underlying belief that safety could only be earned through constant, exhausting effort, and that enjoying life without struggle was somehow irresponsible. This is what psychologists sometimes call repetition compulsion. It is the tendency to unconsciously recreate familiar emotional patterns, even painful ones, simply because they feel like home. It rarely looks identical on the surface. He did not become poor like his parents. He became something else that carried the same emotional core, never enough, always working, never fully allowed to rest. The pattern repeats until someone finally sees it. Here again, a choice quietly waits underneath the surface. Repeating your parents' pattern, carrying forward the same anxious relationship with money without ever examining it, versus choosing your own pattern. Deliberately deciding what your relationship with money will look like going forward, based on your values today rather than fears from decades ago. Repeating your parents' pattern feels familiar, almost safe, precisely because it is what you know. Choosing your own pattern feels unfamiliar at first, sometimes even uncomfortable, precisely because it requires stepping into territory nobody modeled for you. This is not about blaming your parents or anyone else who raised you. Most people pass down patterns without any awareness they are doing it, simply repeating what was once passed down to them. The goal here is not blame. The goal is awareness, because awareness is the exact moment where repetition compulsion loses its grip. Once you can name the pattern clearly, speak it plainly to yourself, and recognize it in your own current behavior, you have already begun the process of choosing something different. Lesson 7. Your brain can still be rewritten. The mind that built the old pattern can build a new one. That is not simply a hopeful phrase meant to make you feel better. It is grounded in real science, and it is worth understanding clearly because it changes everything about how you approach the work ahead. For a long time, many people believed the brain was essentially fixed after childhood, that early patterns became permanent, unchangeable structures for life. Modern neuroscience has shown this is not true. The brain remains capable of forming new neural pathways well into adulthood, a quality known as neuroplasticity. In simple terms, the same brain that absorbed old fears and beliefs about money in childhood is fully capable of learning new ones now, at whatever age you happen to be reading or listening to this. This matters enormously because it means none of the patterns discussed so far in this lesson are permanent sentences. The scarcity imprint, the identity ceiling, the repetition compulsion, all of these were learned, and anything learned can eventually be unlearned, or more accurately, replaced with something stronger through consistent practice. Here is what this looks like in real life. Imagine someone who has always felt anxious about checking their bank balance. Instead of avoiding it, as their old pattern would suggest, they choose to check it calmly, once a week without judgment, simply observing the numbers as information rather than as a verdict on their worth. The first few times this feels uncomfortable, but each time they do it without disaster, without the shame they expected, the brain quietly updates its prediction. Checking the balance becomes less threatening. A new, calmer pathway begins to form right alongside the old anxious one. This is the actual mechanism behind lasting change, and that explains why change does not need permission. It needs repetition. Feeling fully confident is not a requirement before you begin acting differently. Nor do you have to wait until old fears disappear completely before making a new choice. Confidence very often comes after the repeated action, not before it. Each small deliberate choice made in the direction of your new blueprint, rather than your old one, sends fresh evidence to your brain that a different way of relating to money is not only possible, but survivable. and eventually even comfortable. This is genuinely good news. It means you are not asking yourself to become a completely different person overnight. You are simply asking your very capable mind to practice a new pattern consistently until that new pattern becomes just as automatic as the old one once was. Lesson 8. A new blueprint is a practice, not a decision. You do not decide a new pattern once. You practice it daily. This is perhaps the most important shift in how you think about the rest of your financial life, because most people approach change as though it were a single event. They imagine a moment of decision followed immediately by a completely new life. Then, when old fears or habits resurface a week later, they assume they have failed. A new money blueprint does not work this way. It is built the same way the old one was built, through repetition. Small moments accumulated over time until a new default finally takes hold. The difference now is that you get to choose the moments on purpose, instead of simply absorbing whatever happened to be around you as a child. Remember the earlier choice we discussed, believing money is dangerous versus believing money is a tool? That belief will not transform permanently just because you understand the idea intellectually while listening to this lesson. It transforms through daily proof. Each time you make a calm, intentional decision with money instead of a fear-driven one, you offer your mind fresh evidence that the tool belief is now the true one. Here is something simple you can do tonight. Choose one new money belief you would like to practice going forward. It might be something like, I am allowed to enjoy the money I have worked hard for. Or, I make calm decisions with money even when I feel uncertain. Write that single sentence down somewhere you will actually see it again, not as an empty phrase, but as a genuine reminder of the new direction you are choosing. Small proof repeated becomes a new identity. None of this demands perfection. There will be days when old fear shows up again, when an old habit briefly takes over. That does not erase your progress. It simply means the old pathway is still there alongside the new one you are building. Over time, with consistent practice, the new pathway becomes stronger, and it becomes your natural automatic response instead of something you have to force. Think of this the same way you would think of learning any new skill, including learning a new language. You do not become fluent by understanding one grammar rule perfectly. You become fluent through daily, imperfect practice. Small moments of use, repeated until the new pattern feels as natural as breathing. Your money blueprint works exactly the same way. Understanding it today is simply the first necessary step. Practicing it quietly and consistently is what actually rewrites it. Lesson 9. The rewrite belongs to you. Let us bring everything together now, because this is where it all matters most. You began this lesson believing, perhaps without ever saying it out loud, that your relationship with money was simply who you are. Careless, anxious, never quite enough, never quite free. But by now you understand something far more accurate. That relationship was built. Built in kitchens you no longer sit in. Built by people doing their best with fear they never fully understood themselves. Built before you were old enough to question a single part of it. There is a ceiling in your mind long before there is one on your paycheck, and that ceiling was never truly yours to begin with. It belonged to a moment, a household of fear that made sense once in a different life under different circumstances. It does not have to make sense now. Somehow, without planning it, so many of us end up standing exactly where our parents once stood, not because we are destined to repeat their story, but because nobody ever taught us to look closely enough to choose differently. Now you have looked. Now you know the pattern exists, and a pattern you can name is a pattern you can finally interrupt. And the mind that built that old pattern, the very same mind, is fully capable of building something new. Not through one dramatic transformation, but through the same quiet repetition that built the original blueprint in the first place. That is not a small consolation. This is the entire point. If a blueprint can be learned, it can absolutely be relearned. The old pattern was assigned to you. A new one is yours to build. Say that again, this time as a decision rather than an observation. Not "this happened to me," but instead, "I see it now, and I choose what happens next." That single shift from unconscious repetition to conscious choice is the real turning point this entire lesson has been building toward. The blueprint was written by someone else. The rewrite is written by you. Nobody is coming to erase your financial history, and that erasing was never the requirement anyway. A different childhood is not the price of a different future. You only need what you already have right now: awareness and the willingness to practice something new. One honest choice at a time, starting exactly where you stand today. We have walked through a lot together in this lesson. From the quiet moments at a childhood kitchen table, to the fears absorbed simply by watching, to the ceilings that live in the mind long before they ever appear on a paycheck. Every piece of it points back to the same simple, freeing truth. None of it was ever really about being good or bad with money. It was always about what you learned early, without ever being asked if you agreed. You were not born into this pattern. You were only trained into it, and training can be undone. That is the real gift hidden inside everything we have covered today. If a belief about money can be installed early through repetition and emotion, then a new belief can be installed the exact same way, deliberately this time, by you. Permission is not required to begin. Waiting for the fear to disappear completely is not required either before making a different choice. You simply need to start noticing, start naming, and start practicing one small moment at a time. Your past set the pattern. You can set a new one. Carry that sentence with you longer than you carry this video. Let it come to mind the next time you feel that old familiar fear rise up around a financial decision. Whether it is checking an account, asking for what you are worth, or simply allowing yourself to enjoy something you have honestly earned. In that moment, you get to choose. Not your childhood. Not your parents' fears. You. Keep learning English through lessons like this one, and your mind will grow right along with it. Before you go, I want to hear from you. What is one money belief from your childhood you are ready to let go of? Tell us below. Sometimes simply writing it down and saying it out loud to yourself or to someone else is the very first act of rewriting it. Thank you for spending this time learning with me today. If this lesson gave you something worth thinking about, share it with someone who might need to hear it too. And I will see you in the next one.